Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand something powerful today. Your existence is not an accident. You are here because God has a purpose for your life. Before you were born, He orchestrated every detail of your being. Your gifts, your talents, even the challenges you face, none of it is random. You were designed for greatness. You see, the human mind often limits the understanding of God's plans. We think small because we evaluate life based on what we see, what we feel, and what we can comprehend. But God operates on a completely different level. He doesn't think like we do. He doesn't measure by our standards. The plans He has for you are bigger than your education, bigger than your family background, and far beyond what you can imagine. The challenge many of us face is not that we lack potential, but that we lack vision. We confine ourselves to the boxes society builds for us. We let fear, doubt, and circumstances shape our dreams. But let me remind you today, God's plans are not bound by human limitations. He sees the end from the beginning. While you are focused on surviving today, God is preparing you for eternity. When God called Abraham, He didn't show him the whole picture. He simply said, leave your father's house and go to a land I will show you. God's plans require Abraham to trust, to step out, to walk into the unknown. Why? Because faith activates the fulfillment of divine purpose. God's plans often seem too big for us because they are not meant to be accomplished in our strength, but through His power. Don't let the size of your vision intimidate you. The fact that it seems impossible is proof that it is divine. If it was something you could achieve on your own, you wouldn't need God. He deliberately places you in situations where His intervention is required. That's how He gets the glory. Consider this: everything you have experienced, your successes, your failures, your pain, and your joy has been a part of God's preparation process. The setbacks were setups. The delays were not denials, but opportunities for God to refine your character. The dreams you buried because they seemed too far out of reach, those dreams are still alive in the heart of God. The question is not whether God has a plan for you. The question is whether you are willing to align with it. Will you trust Him when the road is unclear? Will you step out in faith when the resources are lacking? Will you dare to believe that the God who created the universe has uniquely positioned you to impact the world? Your purpose is not just about you. It's about the lives you are destined to touch, the generations you will inspire, and the legacy you will leave behind. God's plan is not just big, it is eternal. What you do with your life now echoes in eternity. So I urge you, stop thinking small. Stop settling for mediocrity. God's plan for you is so much bigger than you think. Trust Him, obey Him, and watch Him exceed every expectation you've ever had. We often look at life through the lens of our own limitations. We see what we don't have, who we're not, and where we've fallen short. But God's perspective is so much higher. He doesn't see your weaknesses as a barrier. He sees them as an opportunity to display His strength. He doesn't define you by your past mistakes. He defines you by the potential He placed in you before the foundations of the world were laid. Think about it. God created the heavens and the earth with a word. He flung stars into space, set planets into orbit, and established the rhythms of day and night. The same God who orchestrated all of creation designed you with a specific purpose in mind. You are not an afterthought. You are a deliberate part of His grand design. Sometimes we feel insignificant because we compare ourselves to others. We look at their gifts, their success, and their influence, and we start to believe the lie that what we bring to the table isn't enough. But let me tell you something. No one can fulfill the purpose God has for you. No one else has your unique combination of experiences, abilities, and perspective. You were created to solve a problem, to fill a gap, to meet a need that no one else can. The enemy would love for you to stay discouraged, to stay distracted, and to stay doubting. Why? Because if he can keep you questioning your worth, he can keep you from stepping into your destiny. But the truth is, your value doesn't come from what people say about you or even what you think about yourself. Your value comes from the fact that you are a child of God, created in his image and called according to his purpose. When Moses stood before the burning bush, he doubted himself. He told God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh?" But God didn't respond by listing Moses' qualifications. He didn't remind Moses of his education or his upbringing in Pharaoh's palace. Instead, God said, "I will be with you." You see, it was never about Moses' ability, it was about God's presence. And the same is true for you. God's plans for you are not limited by your resources. They are not hindered by your environment. They are not constrained by the opinions of others. His plans are only limited by your willingness to trust him. Faith is the currency of heaven, and it is through faith that we access the fullness of God's purpose for our lives. Some of you are waiting for everything to be perfect before you step out. You're waiting for more money, more clarity, more affirmation. But faith doesn't wait for perfect conditions. Faith moves forward even when the way is unclear. Faith takes action even when the outcome is uncertain. God didn't call you to understand every step. He called you to trust him with every step. Think about Joseph. God gave him a dream that one day he would lead, that his brothers and even nations would bow before him. But the path to that dream was anything but straightforward. He was betrayed by his family, sold into slavery, falsely accused and thrown into prison. Yet, in every season, Joseph remained faithful. He didn't allow his circumstances to dictate his attitude. He trusted that God's plan was still in motion, even when it didn't look like it. And when the time was right, God elevated Joseph to a position of power and influence. But here's the key: Joseph's success wasn't just about him. It was about saving lives during a famine, preserving the lineage of Israel, and ultimately fulfilling God's covenant promises. In the same way, your purpose is connected to something much bigger than you. God is a generational God. He doesn't just think about your life, he thinks about the impact of your life on those who come after you. The choices you make, the risks you take, and the obedience you demonstrate are all part of a legacy that will outlive you. Your purpose is a seed, and when you plant it in faith, it has the potential to grow into something that touches countless lives. But here's the thing about seeds: they don't grow overnight. There's a process. There's a season of planting, a season of waiting, and eventually a season of harvest. Some of you are in the waiting season right now, and it feels like nothing is happening. But let me encourage you, God is working beneath the surface. He is preparing the soil, strengthening your roots, and positioning you for growth. Don't despise small beginnings. Don't overlook the importance of the season you're in. Every experience, every lesson, every trial is preparing you for what's next. The waiting is not wasted, it is part of the process. Trust that God's timing is perfect. And when the season of harvest comes, it will be greater than anything you could have imagined. Sometimes God's plan requires us to let go of what we think we need. Abraham had to leave his homeland. Ruth had to leave her family. Peter had to leave his fishing nets. What is God asking you to leave behind? What is he calling you to release so that you can fully embrace his plan? Letting go is not always easy, but it is necessary. You cannot step into the new thing God has for you while clinging to the old. It requires faith, it requires trust, and it requires obedience. But when you let go, you make room for God to move in ways that will exceed your expectations. God's plan is not just about where he's taking you, it's about who he's making you. He is far more concerned with your character than your comfort. He will allow you to go through seasons of stretching and refining because he knows that the person you become in the process is just as important as the destination. Think about David. Before he became king, he was a shepherd. He spent years in obscurity, tending sheep and fighting off lions and bears. It was during those hidden years that God was preparing him for the throne. The skills he developed in the pasture were the same skills he would need in the palace. In the same way, the challenges you face today are preparing you for the opportunities of tomorrow. The struggles you overcome are equipping you with the strength, wisdom, and perseverance you'll need to fulfill your purpose. Nothing is wasted in God's economy. So don't lose heart. Don't give up on the dream God placed in your heart. Don't settle for less than what he has promised. The journey may be long and the road may be difficult, but the destination is worth it. God's plan for you is bigger than you think, and he is faithful to complete what he started in you. When you align yourself with God's purpose, you position yourself for supernatural favor. Doors will open that no man can shut. Opportunities will come that you didn't seek out. Relationships will form that propel you forward. But it all starts with surrendering your plans, your fears, and your limitations to the one who knows the end from the beginning. God's dream for your life is not small because God himself is not small. He is the creator of the universe, the King of Kings, and the Lord of Lords. And yet, this same God cares deeply about you. He has numbered the hairs on your head. He knows the desires of your heart, and he has promised to guide your steps. Trust him. Follow him. Believe that his plan is not only bigger than you think, but also better than anything you could imagine. And as you walk in obedience, watch how he takes your life and turns it into something extraordinary. When you begin to understand the magnitude of God's plan for your life, everything changes. You start to see your life not as a series of random events, but as a divinely orchestrated masterpiece. Even the moments that seemed like failures, the times you felt overlooked, the seasons of struggle, none of it was wasted. God uses every experience to shape you, mold you, and prepare you for the destiny he has designed. But here's what we must recognize: stepping into the fullness of God's plan requires partnership. God will not force his will on you. He gives you the freedom to choose, the freedom to align yourself with his purpose or to pursue your own path. And often, it is in that tension between God's plan and our plans that we find our greatest challenge. Human beings are naturally inclined to seek control. We want to plan our future, set our goals, and map out our steps. But the truth is, our vision is limited. We can only see so far ahead. And we often make decisions based on fear, insecurity, or a desire for comfort. Yet God, in his infinite wisdom, sees the bigger picture. He knows where each step will lead, and he knows the outcome of every decision. This is why trust is so essential. Trusting God means surrendering your plans to him, even when it doesn't make sense. It means saying yes to his will, even when the path ahead is unclear. It means believing that his thoughts are higher than your thoughts and his ways are higher than your ways. The Bible is filled with stories of people who had to trust God in the face of uncertainty. Noah was told to build an ark before there was any sign of rain. Gideon was called to lead an army with only 300 men against an overwhelming enemy. Mary was chosen to carry the Savior of the world, even though it risked her reputation and her future. In each case, their obedience unlocked the fulfillment of God's plan. What about you? What is God asking you to do that feels impossible? What step of faith is he calling you to take? Maybe it's starting something new, leaving something behind, or simply trusting him with an area of your life that you've been holding on to tightly. Whatever it is, know this: your obedience is the key to unlocking God's promises. Obedience doesn't mean you'll always understand what God is doing. In fact, there will be times when His plan seems completely illogical. But that's because God is not limited by human reasoning. He sees the end from the beginning. He knows how to connect the dots in ways that we cannot comprehend. Think about Joshua and the walls of Jericho. God's strategy for victory was not conventional. He didn't tell Joshua to gather weapons or devise a military plan. Instead, He instructed the Israelites to march around the city for 7 days and then shout. To the natural mind, this made no sense. But Joshua obeyed, and the walls came down. Why? Because God's power is released through faith and obedience. This is the principle we must grasp. God's plan for you will always require faith. Faith is not just believing that God exists, it's believing that He is who He says He is, and that He will do what He has promised. Faith is stepping out even when you don't have all the answers. Faith is trusting that God's provision will meet you as you walk in obedience. But let's be honest, faith is not always easy. There will be moments of doubt, moments of fear, and moments when you feel like giving up. In those moments, you must remind yourself of God's faithfulness. Look back on what He has already done in your life. Remember the times He provided when you thought there was no way. Reflect on the prayers He has answered, the doors He has opened, and the battles He has won on your behalf. God's track record is flawless. He has never failed, and He will not start with you. The same God who parted the Red Sea, who fed thousands with 5 loaves and 2 fish, who raised Lazarus from the dead, that same God is working in your life. He is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that you can ask or think, according to His power that works in you. But here's the thing, God's power is not just for your benefit. His plan for your life is always connected to His greater purpose. He blesses you so that you can be a blessing to others. He positions you for influence so that you can point people to Him. He gives you resources, opportunities, and platforms not for your own glory but for His. This is why humility is so important. As God begins to elevate you, as He begins to unfold His plan for your life, you must remember that it's not about you, it's about Him. The gifts He has given you are tools to fulfill His purpose. The success He brings you is a testament to His goodness. The impact you have is a reflection of His glory. Stay grounded. Stay dependent on Him. Stay in a posture of gratitude and worship. The moment you start to think it's all about your effort, your talent, or your intelligence, you risk losing sight of the one who gave it all to you. God's plan for you is bigger than you think. Not just in terms of what you will accomplish, but in terms of the lives you will touch. Your obedience, your faith, your willingness to step into God's purpose. It's not just for you. It's for your family, your community, your generation, and even generations to come. You may not see the full impact of your life on this side of eternity, but know this: nothing you do for God is ever in vain. Every act of obedience, every step of faith, every sacrifice you make, it all matters. It all contributes to the bigger picture that God is painting. So keep going. Keep trusting. Keep believing. The journey may be long and the road may be difficult, but the destination is worth it. God's plan for you is not just bigger than you think, it's better than you can imagine. And as you walk in obedience, as you align yourself with His purpose, you will discover the joy, the fulfillment, and the peace that come from living the life you were created to live. As you continue walking this journey, you must also prepare your heart for the challenges that come with pursuing God's plan. God's dreams for you are grand, but they will not come without opposition. Anything worth pursuing will demand perseverance, and the more significant the purpose, the greater the resistance. This isn't to discourage you, but to strengthen your resolve. The enemy will try to derail you with doubt, fear, distractions, and discouragement. But you must remain steadfast. Understand this resistance is not a sign that you're on the wrong path often. It's confirmation that you're on the right one. The adversary doesn't waste energy fighting those who pose no threat to his plans. He attacks those who are advancing the kingdom of God. So if you're experiencing obstacles, it's because your obedience has put you on the front lines of a spiritual battle. But take heart, God has already equipped you for the fight. You have been given the armor of God, the Word as your weapon, and the Holy Spirit as your guide. You don't fight in your own strength, you fight from a place of victory. The cross has already secured your triumph. David understood this when he faced Goliath. Everyone else saw an impossible situation, a young shepherd boy against a seasoned giant. But David saw it differently. He knew the battle wasn't his, it was the Lord's. With a sling and a few stones, he brought down what others thought was undefeatable. That same spirit of faith lies in you. You may not feel qualified, but God specializes in using the unlikely to accomplish the extraordinary. Your greatest weapon in this journey is your relationship with God. Stay close to Him, spend time in His Word, seek Him in prayer, worship Him not just for what He has done, but for who He is. It is in His presence that you will find the clarity, strength, and courage you need to move forward. You must also surround yourself with people who will encourage and challenge you. God's plan for your life is not something you are meant to fulfill in isolation. He created us for community. Just as iron sharpens iron, the right relationships will sharpen your faith and propel you toward your purpose. Be intentional about who you allow to speak into your life. Seek out mentors, friends, and leaders who will push you to grow and hold you accountable to the calling God has placed on you. At the same time, you may need to distance yourself from voices that sow doubt, negativity, or fear. Not everyone will understand the vision God has given you, and that's okay. Your purpose is unique to you, and it's not for everyone to comprehend. Stay focused on what God has spoken, and don't let the opinions of others distract you from the path He has set before you. There will be moments when you feel like giving up. The journey will get hard, and the dream will feel distant. But in those moments, remember why you started. Remember the promises of God. Remember that He who began a good work in you is faithful to complete it. Hold on to His word like an anchor and let it sustain you through every storm. Think about the process of refining gold. The raw material must be subjected to intense heat to remove impurities. It's not a comfortable process, but it's necessary to reveal the gold's true value. In the same way, God will allow you to go through seasons of refining. These seasons may feel like fire, but they are designed to purify your heart, strengthen your faith, and prepare you for the weight of His purpose. Don't resist the process. Embrace it. Trust that God knows what He's doing, even when it's painful. He is more concerned with your character than your comfort, because He knows that character is what sustains you when you reach your destination. The gifts and opportunities He gives you are powerful, but without the character to support them, they can crumble. God's plan for your life is not just about what you will do. It's about who you will become. He is shaping you into someone who reflects His image, someone who carries His heart, someone who can handle the magnitude of the calling He has placed on you. This is why the journey is just as important as the destination. Every step you take, every lesson you learn, every obstacle you overcome, it's all part of the preparation. You may not see the full picture now, but one day you will look back and realize that everything was connected. The moments of confusion, the seasons of waiting, the times of breakthrough, they were all pieces of a puzzle that only God could put together. So keep moving forward, even when it feels like you're walking in the dark. Keep trusting, even when the answers don't come right away. Keep believing, even when the odds seem stacked against you. God is faithful, and his plans for you are good. There will be a day when you stand in the fulfillment of his promises, and you will realize that it was worth it. The sacrifices, the struggles, the steps of faith, it will all make sense. And in that moment, you will see the ripple effect of your obedience. You will see how your faith inspired others, how your perseverance paved the way for those who came after you, and how your life became a testimony of God's greatness. This is what it means to live a life aligned with God's plan. It's not just about achieving goals or fulfilling dreams. It's about glorifying him in everything you do. It's about becoming the person he created you to be and walking in the fullness of his purpose. As you continue this journey, remember that God is with you every step of the way. He has gone before you to prepare the path, and he walks beside you to guide and strengthen you. His grace is sufficient. His love is unending. And his plans for you are bigger and better than you could ever imagine. Keep pressing on, for the best is yet to come. As you stand at the crossroads of decision, let this truth resonate in your spirit. God's plan for you is bigger, greater, and more extraordinary than anything you can conceive. He is not limited by your circumstances, your past, or even your doubts. His power is made perfect in your weakness, and his purpose will prevail if you choose to trust him and walk in obedience. You were created for more. You were designed for impact. The dreams God has placed in your heart are not accidental. They are divine seeds waiting to be nurtured through faith and action. Do not let fear hold you back. Do not allow the opinions of others or the challenges of life to diminish the greatness God has called you to. Step boldly into his purpose, knowing that he has already gone before you. The God who flung the stars into space, who holds the oceans in his hands, and who conquered death itself is with you. You are not walking this journey alone. His presence will guide you, his strength will sustain you, and his grace will carry you. Dare to dream bigger. Dare to believe that the God of the universe has a plan for your life that surpasses your imagination. And as you align your heart with his will, you will not only see his promises fulfilled, but you will become a vessel of his glory, a light in a dark world, and a testimony to his unfailing love. The time is now. Rise up in faith, move forward with courage, and embrace the life God has prepared for you. The best is yet to come, and his plans for you are greater than you could ever ask, think, or imagine. Trust him. Obey him. Live for him and watch what he will do through you.